And the Academy Award for Best 1-1 Draw goes to Liverpool versus Manchester City, starring Pep Guardiola and Jurgen Klopp. Oh, sorry, miles away there. Football. Alright, so a lot to talk about in this game because it was changing about as quickly and as unpredictably as Kate Middleton's location. But if we look at the Liverpool starting 11, straight away you will see problem number 1, problem number 2, problem number 3, and problem number 4. And the thing is, while I am about to heap praise upon all of these players, they are not ones you would want to be starting against Manchester City if you could absolutely possibly help it. So Jurgen Klopp's job was to get more out of this 11 than perhaps you would think it was capable of, and he did do that eventually. Now, we are all accustomed this season to seeing Liverpool start slow and potentially go behind, and they probably should have done here because their initial idea for how to deal with Manchester City just straight up did not work. And it's all about the midfield here, right? Because I'll just add Manchester City's midfield in once they get their little box going. You know how it works. John Stones pushes out from the back line, goes into the same line as Rodri, and then, as you can see, you get a 4 versus 3 advantage in the middle of the pitch. And the initial idea was that Connor Bradley, who actually can invert and has done it for the reserves, was going to come into the middle and then sort of help, so you match them up 4 versus 4, but that just, no, didn't work. Alvarez stayed really, really wide, which kind of pinned Bradley onto this side of the pitch. He couldn't get over as much as he was needed to, and that meant that Haaland and De Bruyne were free to float either side of Endo, and they kept receiving the ball in these spaces here. And City were just really good in those first couple of minutes because of this. Like, if we look at it here, you can see pocket of space, which you do not want to be giving him. He gets on the ball and they create the chance from that area. And again, here, exactly the same thing, just on the other side. He's found that pocket of space away from Endo. He gets the ball, and that's how they make the chance. So what Jurgen Klopp then decides to do is, rather than try and stop De Bruyne and Silva with these 3 players, because their movement was just too good, they were floating around, they were finding the space regardless, they instead decided to target Stones and Rodri instead. And the way they did this, right, we'll just get rid of Alvarez, because let's face it, might as well have not even been there, was they moved Kelleher effectively into their own back 3, right, which split Kwanzaa and Van Dijk really far apart, which allowed Bradley and Joe Gomez to push right the way up the pitch, which in turn, I've knocked that ball off, brought the 2 wide attackers more into the middle. But this is the key bit, because it allowed Szoboszlai and McAllister to be really aggressive on Stones and Rodri, to get right onto them before they could turn with the ball and effectively mark Bernardo Silva and De Bruyne out the game, not by marking them, but by cutting off the passing lanes into them. Now, from an attacking point of view, this was actually really, really effective because they started forcing turnovers quite high up the pitch. You can see one here against Stones and Rodri, and because they're so far up, they were using that to create quite a lot of chances. They should score from this. Like, even just think about the maths of it for a second. Like, you had 3 players in this part of the pitch trying to look after De Bruyne and Silva, but that wasn't working. So what you do is you just leave them with 1 player instead. Like, it's enormously risky because Man City are probably one of the best sides in the world at playing through a press, and if they play through your press, you are then like, there was a moment in the second half where I think it's kind of in a transition, so they're not properly set, but you can see here the amount of room De Bruyne finds himself in. City can very easily find him with a pass. He turns quickly, quicker than almost any other player would be able to do, and he puts Foden in for a chance where he should probably score. Like, Endo's job here is not to mark both of these players, because obviously he can't do that, but he is like a backstop in case a ball does come through. But that's an insane thing to ask a player to do for 90 minutes against Bernardo Silva and Kevin De Bruyne. So inevitably, there were going to be moments where that didn't work. And if Foden had scored here, you'd look at this and be like, well, they tried this and it was quite effective, but in the end, that freedom they gave them cost them. That isn't what happened, is it? That's not the reality we got. The reality we got was this. And if you're not sure what you're looking at straight away, this is every successful pass Kevin De Bruyne made after Liverpool made that change in like the 10th or 12th minute. So from like minute 10 or 12 until his substitution, this is everything Kevin De Bruyne was able to do. Now, that Foden pass we've just mentioned is this one here that they should have scored from, and if they did, it's a very different video, but he didn't. So just take that one out of the equation for a second and look at all the other forward passes he made. All one of them. Now, I get he was absolutely furious to be substituted because it's a big game and it's a pressurised atmosphere, and when you're frustrated, that all does bubble out. But at the time of Mateo Kovacic coming on that pitch, Kevin De Bruyne had not completed a single pass anywhere for about 12 minutes. Just to give you a frame of reference here, right, let's get rid of all of this and change it for this. Now, this is every pass, successful or otherwise, that Kevin De Bruyne made in those first 10 minutes. Like, it's not loads, because it's a very small amount of time, but you can see just from the positions they're either coming from or going into, he's really, really dangerous. Like the sum into the box. This one flashes right across the face. This is a cross that someone should get the end of. Get the end of. Get on the end of. Obviously, get the end of would be weird. Now, that is how that change stopped Manchester City, but you don't get any prizes for stopping teams. You have got to open them up as well. So how did it open them up? Right, I've just reset this here really quickly. Do you remember problems 1, 2, 3, and 4? Because they were brilliant. So we've already mentioned that as part of wanting to turn the ball over either in the middle or high, that the two wide attackers had come quite narrow, and this gives your fullbacks a bit of a problem. It wasn't too bad on this side for Kyle Walker, because while Joe Gomez was pushing up, he's not going to get to the byline, and even if he does, he's on his weaker foot, so he wasn't as much of an attacking threat, but it was a nightmare. Oh my god, was it a nightmare for Nathan Ake. That's because issue number 1 is he does kind of want to get drawn into this area with Harvey Elliott, because Elliott's very good on the ball, and if you give him space in the channel, he can put crosses in. If any of the other defenders start getting drawn towards him, then someone like Darwin Núñez could potentially get in that space, so he does kind of want to go there. But issue 2 is that Connor Bradley is not Joe Gomez and will very happily run into that channel, and if Ake isn't there to cover that, then they've got a ball out wide. We know Bradley can cross. We know Bradley can continue his run into the box, so he's kind of got to be mindful of both of these things happening. And issue number 3 was that when Connor Bradley made these runs down the flank and Ake could have used a bit of help, Julian Alvarez in front of him was about as much use defensively as a marzipan dildo. Time and time again, Liverpool got down this right-hand side, Harvey Elliott making these really clever runs outside to in, drawing the defenders with him to create this kind of space, and Bradley getting in to exploit it. And just to quickly reaffirm this point before we move on, right, Kelleher, Quansah, Bradley, Elliott, all 4 players who were vital to making this change and allowing Liverpool to get in down the right-hand side, and all 4 players you would not in a million years want to start against Manchester City if you had other options. Like, just the bravery from all 4 of them at this stage of their career to play like this in this kind of environment against this level of opposition. Like, you can't really put the penalty or the goal down to this miraculous change in system, but just look who's pressurising Nathan Ake here. Look who's rushing him into making that back pass without having time to look. It's Connor Bradley. It's the right back. Like, Liverpool have lost the ball here. They've given it back to Manchester City. The easy thing to do, especially for a young player, would be to think, oh, hang on, I'm miles out of position here. I've got to work back the other way so they don't get into the space I've left. But he doesn't do that. He just thinks, nah, do you know what? Going to put him under, see if he makes a mistake. And he does, with this exact comedy sound effect. And you know what as well? Liverpool's best chance of winning this game came actually from taking Connor Bradley off, but just doing the exact same thing they were doing on the right, on the left. After the substitutions, Liverpool looked like this. Gomez had come over to the right. Now Robertson was on the left. You had Mo Salah here, but that now meant the onus on getting up the flank was on the left. And if you've been wondering why Luis Diaz suddenly looked amazing in those last 30 minutes, it is because of this. The onus was on him to come inside of this area of the pitch, which meant Kyle Walker, who again was not getting adequate protection from Phil Foden on that side, had to come here, but didn't want to because Robertson was going to be there, so was constantly in positions he did not want to be in. And were it not for a brilliant save from Ortega, Liverpool would have won the game doing this exact thing. Like you can see here, they've lured Walker out of the position he wants to be in into the centre of the pitch. This leaves all this room for Andy Robertson. He gets played in, the cross is brilliant, Núñez connects with it, and that should have been the game. Now, I'm just going to end on something which I think is a really sort of, it's not tactics based, it's all up here, but I think it's really interesting. Man City could very easily have gone on and won this game as well, in my opinion. Like, it didn't matter what Liverpool were doing and how effective that was being, it was leaving gaps, and they are good enough that they can punish anyone under those circumstances. And obviously Doku hits the post, we talked about that Foden chance as well, but in the last 20-25 minutes of that game, when Man City were getting the ball, they were slowing things down. They were desperate to try and get a little bit of control back, even if that meant not being as attacking. Now, that's not an amazing observation. I'm sure we all noticed that watching it, but it does tell you that getting into the final part of it, Man City could see which way things were going, and that deep down, they were happy to get out of there with a point, which is fair enough. But if we just rewind all the way to the very start of the match, Sky get their cameras in Man City's huddle, and Rodri says the following thing: "We are here to win." Forget the fact that Man City don't normally do well at Anfield, right? That side turned up today, looked at that Liverpool team and thought, we've got so much more than they do. And in theory, they were right. But because of this tactical tweak that Klopp had made early on, and way more important than that, because of how hard these four players worked to make up for any sort of shortfall they might have to their more experienced teammates, City weren't there to win by the end of it. They were there to hold on to a point. And honestly, I really, really enjoyed this game. It deserved to have a winner one way or the other. But I think when you sort of look at the story of the match, probably should have been Liverpool. Oh, and one last thing, because I know it'll get addressed in the comments. Should Liverpool have had a penalty right at the end? And, yeah, they should have had a penalty. He hit him with his studs in his chest, and I don't think he gets the ball first. Like, I can kind of get when you just sort of watch it the first time and say, oh, well, he does get the ball. It's sort of unfortunate. There's no point overruling that. But if you watch it in super duper slow-mo, I think McAllister gets there first. But is that insight from me? Is it, hey, VAR sometimes isn't very good, lol? You probably know that. You've probably figured that out. But anyway, yes, if you have enjoyed this video, I say it every single time, the subscribe button is just the nicest thing you can possibly do for us. It's a really, really important metric that shows us where we're going and lets us do more stuff. So if you'd like to watch more of these in the future, click this, you won't miss them. But wait, hang on, before you go anywhere, thoughts and feelings in the comments are not just welcomed, they are encouraged. And specifically, if you are a Liverpool fan, I think out of yourselves, Arsenal and City, you've just had the best performance of the weekend, but probably also the worst result. So how are you feeling about the title challenge as a result of this game? Is that 2 points dropped? Is it 1 point gained? Are you confident? Are you nervous? Are you scared? Please let me know. You're too good for the comment section though. Adam Clery on all social media, CLERY, FourFourTwo socials in the corner of the video. And hey, picked a good one today, didn't we? Because Trent Alexander-Arnold now adorns the cover of the beautiful latest issue of FourFourTwo. So pick that up wherever you can. There's also stuff in the description about it. Until next time though, I'm now about to get back to my daydream where Emma Stone takes me to the Oscars after party, and loads of people just keep asking, so what's the deal with you two? That'll be fun. Goodbye.